Let's cut straight to it, because what went down in Cleveland's third preseason game wasn't just about football. It was about pride, coaching decisions, and the clash between a rookie quarterback's hunger to prove himself and a head coach's rigid plan. And let me tell you, the fallout is messy. Shedeur Sanders, rookie sensation, the name that's had Browns fans foaming at the mouth since draft night, just had his first taste of what the NFL can do to you when things fall apart. He went from looking poised in his first series to being sacked, hit, and battered by defenders crashing to what looked more like tissue paper than an offensive line. And then in the fourth quarter, at a moment when Sanders was practically begging for redemption, Kevin Stefanski yanked him off the field. Now, if you're thinking maybe that was about protecting him, think again. Stefanski's explanation? We want to give Snoop a chance. It's about the team, not one player. If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed. Yeah, that's the sound of a coach trying to downplay a storm that's already out of his control. Because here's the thing, Sanders wasn't happy. Not even close. He didn't throw a tantrum. He didn't scream on the sidelines, but the frustration was written all over his face. He wanted to go back out there, to show he could shake off the sacks, to prove that the hits weren't going to rattle him. Instead, he sat. And the message that sent, to Sanders, to the locker room, to the fans, was that the Browns don't quite trust their shiny new rookie when the fire gets hot. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you set off a controversy in Cleveland. Let's rewind a little. On paper, Shedeur's stat line was ugly. 3 completions on 6 attempts for just 14 yards. 5 sacks for a total loss of 41 yards. To the casual eye, that looks like a rookie drowning. But anyone who watched knows it wasn't just him. The offensive line, if you can even call it that, was a disaster. Guys who probably won't even make the practice squad were whiffing blocks like they were allergic to defensive linemen. Sanders wasn't holding the ball too long because he was indecisive. He was holding it because the second he dropped back, the pocket imploded. And this is where Skip Bayless, of all people, came charging into the conversation, like a bull in a china shop. He went off on the Browns' coaching staff, accusing them of setting Sanders up to fail. And honestly, he's not wrong. Bayless argued that Sanders' struggles had nothing to do with his ability. Put it behind a decent line, and those sacks vanish. Instead, you stick it behind third-string linemen, let him get buried 5 times, and then pull him when he looks frustrated? That's not development. That's sabotage. And the fact that Joe Flacco and Dylan Gabriel, both of whom got cleaner protection, looked solid only makes it worse. Flacco went 9 for 10 with 71 yards. Gabriel played a sharp 2-minute drill that had Stefanski gushing in the post-game presser. But here's the catch. They weren't running for their lives. They weren't dodging free rushers blowing through busted protection. They weren't being handed a broken situation and told, go fix it. Sanders was. So of course he looked frustrated when Stefanski pulled him, because he knew the narrative was being written right there. Sanders struggled. Flacco and Gabriel looked better. That's the story the headlines wanted, and that's the story the coach allowed to happen. But let's zoom in on Sanders himself. His response wasn't loud, wasn't dramatic, but it was telling. He admitted disappointment. He admitted he wanted to keep playing. And in doing so, he revealed exactly why fans love him. He's competitive. He's hungry. He's not content to be benched after a bad stretch. He wanted the chance to battle through it. That's the DNA of a franchise quarterback. Now contrast that with Stefanski. In the post-game presser, he downplayed everything. He tried to make it about the team, about evaluations, about giving everyone opportunities. That all sounds fine on paper, but let's not sugarcoat it. This wasn't about giving Snoop a chance. This was about protecting his narrative. Stefanski didn't want Sanders to keep getting crushed, didn't want the stat line to get uglier, didn't want to answer more questions about why the rookie looked mortal. So he pulled him. The problem? By doing that, he may have sent the exact wrong message to the rookie he's supposed to be building around. Because quarterbacks, especially young ones, live and die by confidence. They need to know their coach trusts them to fight through adversity. and Sanders, who's built his whole identity on not backing down, now has to wrestle with the fact that his own coach didn't let him. The locker room isn't blind to this either. Players saw Sanders take those hits and keep standing. They saw him want to go back out there. They saw the coach pull him anyway. And you can bet they're asking themselves what this says about Stefanski's leadership. Does he really believe in the kid? Or is he playing it safe to protect his job? Fans, meanwhile, are livid. Twitter exploded the second Sanders was yanked. Why pull him when the O-line was the problem? This team doesn't deserve him. Stefanski's going to ruin another quarterback. Cleveland fans don't just want Sanders to succeed. They need him to succeed. He represents more than just a player. He represents hope. And hope doesn't sit well when it's benched. And that's why Skip Bayless' rant struck such a chord, because he said out loud what Cleveland was already thinking. The Browns aren't protecting Sanders. They're holding him back. And in a league where confidence is everything, that can be lethal. Now, let's be fair. Stefanski isn't wrong that the team has bigger issues. The offensive line was atrocious. The receivers were inconsistent. The defense let up plays they shouldn't have. This wasn't just about Sanders. But by pulling him when he wanted to keep fighting, Stefanski turned one problem into two. He exposed the flaws in his roster and risked fracturing trust with his rookie QB. The stakes here are bigger than a preseason box score. Cleveland's entire identity is tied to whether Sanders can be the guy. If Stefanski mishandles him, if he undermines his confidence, sets him up behind shaky protection, or benches him at the wrong times, the Browns risk repeating history. They risk turning another potential savior into just another name on that cursed jersey. And that's why this story matters. Because Shedeur Sanders' rise in Cleveland isn't just about him throwing touchdowns. It's about the Browns finally doing right by their quarterback, protecting him, believing in him, giving him the tools to succeed. And right now, the narrative is tilting dangerously in the wrong direction. So let's ask the real question. What happens next? Does Stefanski double down on his team-first approach, even if it means alienate his rookie? Or does he swallow his pride, admit that Sanders deserves better, and start building around the way ownership clearly intended? Because Sanders has already proven he's not afraid of the spotlight. He's not afraid of the hits. He's not afraid of the pressure. What he's afraid of, what any quarterback fears, is being mismanaged into failure. And unless Cleveland course corrects fast, that's exactly where this is headed. Fans aren't going to let this go. Analysts aren't going to let this go. And Sanders himself? His response, measured, disappointed, but firm, was his way of telling everyone, I want more. I can handle more. Don't sideline me when it gets tough. And if the Browns don't listen, if they keep pulling him at the first sign of struggle, well, let's just say history has a way of repeating itself in Cleveland. And no one wants to see Shedeur Sanders become the next chapter in that curse book. So what do you think? Was Stefanski protecting Sanders from an unfair situation? Or did he rob him of the chance to prove he could rise above it? Drop your thoughts, because this saga isn't ending anytime soon. This week's fake award? Most likely to spark a citywide meltdown over a preseason decision. Take a bow. Shedeur, you wanted to fight. You wanted to prove yourself. And now the entire NFL knows you're not afraid of the hits, only of being held back. All right, let's stretch this story out, because what happened in Cleveland isn't just another preseason drama. It's the kind of moment that exposes every crack in a franchise. Shedeur Sanders getting pulled in the fourth quarter by Kevin Stefanski is about more than one decision, more than one stat line. It's about trust culture and the dangerous line between protecting a rookie and undermining him in front of the world. You could feel the tension building long before that moment. Sanders had come into the game with the kind of buzz rookies dream about. The city wanted him to prove he could hang. The fans wanted a glimpse of the future. The coaching staff wanted him to get reps, but nothing too risky. And then, in a blink, it all unraveled. The offensive line folded like a cheap tent in a windstorm, leaving Sanders to take sack after sack. Not one, not two, but 5 brutal takedowns that had everyone watching asking the same thing. Are they really going to lead him out there to be cannon fodder? And then Stefanski made his move, pulled him. On paper, that looks like protection. Save your rookie from getting destroyed, right? But to Sanders, to his teammates, to the fans, it didn't look like protection. It looked like doubt. It looked like a coach who didn't trust his guy to stand back up and fight through it. That's where the emotional split happened. Sanders is a competitor. He's built his whole brand, his entire football identity, on refusing to be rattled. From high school to college to this first taste of the NFL, he's shown the same thing over and over. You can hit me, you can pressure me, but I will not fold. That's why his frustration on the sideline rang so loud. Not because he played badly, but because he wasn't given a chance to redeem himself. And trust me, players notice that kind of thing. They see when a quarterback is yanked not because of injury, but because of narrative. They see when a coach decides the optics of pulling a struggling rookie are cleaner than the optics of letting him battle. And when players see that, they don't just judge the quarterback. They judge the coach. The post-game press conference didn't help. Stefanski played the usual card. This isn't about one guy, it's about the team. We wanted to see Snoop. We're still evaluating everyone. On the surface, it sounded measured, but in reality it was hollow, because this was about one guy. You don't put the future of your franchise on the field and then pretend his performance isn't headline material. You don't invest kind of hype, marketing, and resources the Browns have poured into Sanders and then shrug when he gets pulled at the exact moment fans wanted him to prove himself. Skip Bayless pounced on this. Of course he did. Controversy is his oxygen. But even with Skip's flair for hyperbole, his core point hit home. Sanders was set up to fail. You cannot evaluate a quarterback when you're protecting him with linemen who wouldn't start on a high school team. You cannot judge pocket presence when the pocket collapses before the snap. Sanders wasn't indecisive. He was trapped. And instead of fixing the problem, the Browns decided to cover their eyes and swap quarterbacks. That's why Skip's rant resonated so hard. Because Cleveland fans already feel cursed, already feel like the football gods enjoy dangling hope in front of them only to snatch it away. Watching Sanders, their shiny new hope, get tossed into a doomed situation and then yanked when he want to keep fighting, that was like deja vu. It was like every other quarterback saga they've lived through, wrapped into one painful night. Now let's talk about the ripple effects. For Sanders, this isn't just about frustration. It's about identity. Quarterbacks live on confidence, and this is being tested. Does he trust that his coach has his back? Does he believe Stefanski will put him in positions to succeed, or does he think the leash is already too tight? These are questions that stick with young quarterbacks. And if the answer is wrong, if the trust is broken, the damage lingers. For Stefanski, this moment could define his relationship with Sanders. Coaches love to talk about developing rookies, but development isn't just about film study or mechanics. It's about psychology. It's about showing your quarterback, I believe in you even when things go wrong. By pulling Sanders, Stefanski might have thought he was shielding him. But to the kid, and to everyone watching, it looked like he was shielding himself. And then there's the locker room. Veterans know how this works. They've seen coaches protect their guys while hanging others out to dry. They know when a quarterback has that extra it factor, and they know when management is too blind or too political to see it. Some of those veterans saw Sanders' frustration and nodded because they knew the rookie wasn't afraid of the hits. He was afraid of not being allowed to fight. Meanwhile, Dillon Gabriel and Joe Flacco both had cleaner opportunities. Flacco in particular looked sharp, going 9-4-10. Stefanski couldn't stop praising Gabriel's 2-minute drill. That created a dangerous narrative. The other guys played better. Never mind the fact that Sanders was practically dodging missiles behind that line. Narratives don't care about context. And if Stefanski leans into those narratives, he risks undermining his rookie before the kid even has a fair chance. And let's not forget the fans. Cleveland is not a city that forgives easily. They've lived through too many broken promises, too many botched quarterback experiments. They're not just evaluating Sanders. They're evaluating whether the organization is capable of not screwing this up. And what they saw in that game did not inspire confidence. Their rookies start being set up with a collapsing line, then benched when things look bad. That's the kind of moment that makes fans say, here we go again. But here's the silver lining. Sanders' response, measured, frustrated, but not explosive, might have saved a narrative. He didn't throw his teammates under the bus. He didn't point fingers. He didn't call Stefanski out directly. He acknowledged disappointment. He admitted he wanted to keep playing. And in doing so, he positioned himself exactly where fans want him, as a fighter, as a leader, as a guy who won't accept being babied. That's what separates Sanders from some of the ghosts of Cleveland's past. He doesn't sulk. He demands more. That hunger could turn this into a turning point. If Stefanski is smart, he'll recognize it. He'll see that pulling Sanders may have protected him physically but risked hurting him mentally, and he'll adjust. Give the kid real reps. Give him real protection. Show him that the organization believes in him, even when the stats look ugly. Because if they don't, they're not just risking a game. They're risking the future of their franchise. And let's be honest, the Browns can't afford to risk that. Not again. Not with this quarterback. So where does this leave us? In a mess. A mess that could either galvanize Sanders into becoming the leader Cleveland's been waiting for, or fracture the fragile trust between quarterback and coach before the regular season even begins. Fans are watching. The locker room is watching. The national media is circling like vultures. This isn't just about a preseason coaching adjustment. This is about whether Cleveland finally learns from its history, or whether Shedeur Sanders becomes another name on that cursed jersey. And if you ask me, Sanders' fire, his refusal to accept being pulled, his calm but firm response, that's not the sign of a bust. That's the sign of a quarterback who wants the ball when it matters. The Browns just have to decide if they're going to let him have it. This week's fake award? Most likely to call out his coach without saying a word. Take your bow, Shedeur. You need to scream. The entire NFL already heard you loud and clear. All right, let's peel this thing back layer by layer, because the Shedeur Sanders versus Kevin Stefanski saga isn't just a preseason hiccup. No, it's already shaping into a case study on how a franchise can either nurture or strangle its future. And Cleveland? Well, if there's one city where fans are hypersensitive to quarterback drama, it's Cleveland. Let's paint the scene again. Third preseason game. Lights buzzing. Crowd hoping to see magic. Sanders trots onto the field, cool and collected, ready to show he can take that next step. And for a moment, it looks like he might. The first few plays have a rhythm. He's in control. But then, chaos. The offensive line collapses. Defenders are at his face before he even hits the third step of his drop. And suddenly the rookie prodigy looks like a crash test dummy. Sack after sack. Drive after drive stalling out. And before he can even breathe, before he can even fight for a comeback, Stefanski pulls the plug. That's where the tension explodes. To Sanders, it's not just about being pulled. It's about what that act says. Being yanked in the middle of the tough stretch isn't just a coaching adjustment. It's a message that says, we don't trust you to weather the storm. And for a quarterback, especially a rookie trying to establish himself, that's brutal. Because in the NFL, confidence isn't just a luxury, it's your lifeline. Sanders didn't need to win the game in that moment. He didn't need to light up the stat sheet. What he needed was trust, the chance to stand and take the hits and prove that he could battle through it. That's what builds respect. That's what builds leadership. And Stefanski snatched that away. Now, Stefanski's defense, we wanted to give Snoop a chance. It's about the team, not one player, is exactly the kind of corporate coach speak you'd expect. But fans aren't buying it. Analysts aren't buying it. Even Sanders himself clearly wasn't buying it. Because when you got a young quarterback who's supposed to be the face of your franchise, you don't treat him like just another guy in the rotation. You don't bench him under the guise of team dynamics, when the truth is, you're nervous about how bad it looks. That's the problem here. Optics. Stefanski looked more concerned about the storylines than about the player. Protecting the rookie? Maybe. But protecting the narrative? Definitely. Because let's be honest, seeing Sanders take 5 sacks and lose 41 yards doesn't look pretty in the box score. It gives fuel to critics. It makes the fan base jittery. And it raises uncomfortable questions. So instead of letting Sanders claw his way out, Stefanski pulled him and handed those reps to someone else. And that's exactly why Skip Bayless went nuclear. For once, Skip wasn't just manufacturing outrage. He was voicing what a lot of people were already thinking. Sanders was thrown behind a third-string offensive line that couldn't block a shopping cart. Of course he looked bad. Of course the drives went nowhere. Skip's point was simple. Don't judge a rookie on circumstances designed for failure. And don't you dare pull him out and then praise Gabriel and Flacco for performing better when they had functional protection. That's what set Cleveland fans off. Because this isn't just about football, it's about fairness. Everyone can see that Sanders wasn't given a fair chance. Everyone can see that he wasn't protected. And everyone can see that the coach's decision made him look worse than he deserved. Now, here's where it gets dangerous. These kind of decisions don't just vanish after a preseason game. They linger. They plant seeds. Sanders might not say it outright. He's too composed for that. But you can bet he's thinking about it. Did my coach believe in me? Did he trust me to finish what I started? Or did he pull me because he was worried about the optics? Those thoughts don't just fade away. They shape how a player feels about his role, his future, his relationship with the staff. And let's not forget the locker room. Players notice this stuff. They notice who gets protected and who gets left out to dry. They notice when a guy wants to keep fighting and isn't given a chance. And when they see a rookie standing tall under pressure, only to be pulled before he can prove himself. That resonates. It sparks quiet conversations. It builds narratives inside the team. Because here's the truth. Players respect fight. They respect toughness. They respect the guy who refuses to quit, even when the line's collapsing and the game's slipping away. Sanders showed that fire. Stefanski smothered it. And if the coach doesn't course correct, he risks alienating not just his rookie quarterback, but the veterans who see through the charade. Then there's a fan base. Cleveland isn't a market where you can smooth this over with a soundbite. These fans have lived through decades of quarterback heartbreak. They know what mismanagement looks like. They've seen rookies crushed under bad coaching decisions, bad protection, bad narratives. They're not just watching Sanders. They're watching Stefanski. And what they saw was a coach repeating the same mistakes this franchise has been making for years. That's why the outrage is so visceral. It's not just, why'd you pull him? It's, why are we doing this again? Why are we risking the one quarterback who actually feels different? Why are we mishandling the one shot we have at breaking the curse? And here's the cruel irony. Stefanski probably thought he was protecting Sanders. But in reality, he may have done more damage by undercutting him in front of the entire football world. Because Sanders didn't look afraid of the pressure. He didn't look scared of the hits. What rattled him was being denied the chance to respond. If the Browns are smart, they'll take this as a wake-up call. Sanders doesn't need bubble wrap. He doesn't need to be treated like porcelain. He needs trust. He needs reps. He needs to know that when things get ugly, the coaching staff still believes in him, because that belief is what builds confidence. And confidence is what builds a franchise quarterback. But if they keep pulling him the second the storm clouds roll in, if they keep feeding him to bad protection, and then yanking him when the narrative gets uncomfortable, they're not building a franchise quarterback. They're building resentment. They're building distrust. They're building the next chapter in Cleveland's long, tragic history of wasted talent. And fans know it. That's why they're so loud about this. That's why Skip's rant caught fire. That's why this small preseason adjustment has turned into a full-blown story. Because everyone can feel it. Cleveland's standing at a crossroads. Do they double down on protecting narratives? Or do they finally put their faith in the kid who's shown he's ready to carry the load? Do they let history repeat itself? Or do they finally break the cycle? For Sanders, the response is clear. He's disappointed but not defeated. He's not throwing teammates under the bus. He's not calling out the staff directly. He's just saying, I wanted to keep playing. I can handle this. That's leadership. That's maturity. That's exactly what you want from your quarterback. The ball, ironically, is now in Stefanski's court. He can either recognize that fire, embrace it, and start building around it, or he can keep smothering it under team dynamics until the spark goes out. And let's be honest, if Cleveland loses this kid, if they turn Shedeur Sanders into just another cautionary tale, this franchise might never recover from the backlash. So here's the bottom line. Sanders showed he's not afraid of adversity. He's not afraid of mistakes. He's not afraid of pressure. The only thing he fears, like every quarterback before him, is being mismanaged out of greatness. And Cleveland, you're on the clock. This week's fake award, most likely to make a preseason coaching adjustment feel like a franchise crisis. Take your bow. Shedeur. You wanted the fight. You wanted the chance. And now the whole league knows you're not afraid of the hits, only of being held back.